Hey y'all, I'm Crystal and welcome to Unpolished, or should I say welcome back to Unpolished. This is the podcast where we talk about life, faith, and all the messy in between. Around here, we believe God can use even the parts of our story we wish he couldn't. So pull up a chair, grab a Dr. Pepper Zero, let's get real, because this is Unpolished. So I was wondering what I was going to cover this week in the podcast. I had a few options, a few things. I was going to talk about a few topics. Kason and I were actually thinking of doing a segment each week that I would title Raisin Kason. I got that name from one of my followers in a live. Great title to the podcast because Kason is literally like one of my adopted children. But this week I was like, I'm going to give the readers a little insight about my life. I know some people on the internet have followed me for years. I am a content creator on the internet. I have millions of followers, which is kind of surreal and scary and unbelievable. But I also know that I have a lot of new people following me, new young adults, new women, just a lot of new people that don't know my story or don't know where I came from or are a little unsure about this lady on the internet that dresses weird and has different hair every other week. And they just don't know how to feel about her or who she is or where she came from. So this week on this episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. And some of it's deep, some of it's heavy, some of it I only lightly brush. And maybe we can dig into that part of my life later on. And then at the end of this, I'm going to give you tips if you're wanting to be a content creator, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, if you're wanting to be all of those things, because I get so many people that ask me each week, Crystal, what would you do? How did you do this? Tell me what to do. And I have no problems, girl, giving you all the details. I'm not the one that's going to gatekeep. So are you ready? Pull up your chair and we're going to dive in. Totally unscripted. I'm just talking to you here like you are sitting right here beside me, because if you follow me on the internet, you know that you are my best friend. Okay. You've been my best friend for years. So we're just going to talk. We're going to have a conversation. And I do have ADHD, social anxiety, and a few other disorders. So if I bounce around like a squirrel, you already know what's going on. Okay. So let's title this part 1, the beginning. Okay. I am 42 years old. All right. I live in Georgia. I was born in December. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I have 3 brothers. One is a half brother. One is a biological brother, and one is a step brother. And me being the oldest probably explains why I've been trying to hold the world together since I was about 5. When I was about 5, that's when my parents divorced. I grew up in West Georgia. My mom and dad split when I was little, and I didn't see my mom for quite some time, actually. My dad got custody of my brother and me. My brother was just a baby. He was in diapers. My daddy worked second shift at a factory. He worked there for 42 years. And since he worked second shift 3 to 11, and I was this kid in school, I spent a lot of time with his parents. My mama and my papa. If you follow me long enough, I talk about them all the time. My mama taught me how to sew. She taught me how to garden. She taught me how to cook. She taught me how to do all those things. Maybe that's why it appears that I have an old soul and I do old folk stuff, because I was raised by an old woman. You know, they did not have much money at all, but they were rich in love. And there are so many memories I have of my mama and my papa that I hold close and dear to my heart, you know. That's where I learned what real love looks like. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't perfect, but it was steady. Being a child of divorce was not easy. I always felt like I was looking for love, like I was searching for love, like I was not good enough, you know, and I love both of my parents dearly and deeply now. But I felt like I was a broken child that came from a broken home. And that has weighed heavily on my life, majority of my life. That's what has pushed me to be the mother that I am today, to give my kids everything that I was unable to have. And that's just not monetary wise. I started working full time when I was 15, and I had 2 jobs by the time I was 17. I worked at Wendy's and I worked at Sonic. Yes, Sonic. I was one of those girls on the skates that brought your food out in the skates. I have scars on my knees where I fell plenty of times dropping that food out there in the parking lot. I've basically been on my own since then, since I was 17. I had a really good friend in high school. Her name was Emily. I spent lots of time with her and lots of time with her family, lots of time at her house. Her mother was so dear and so kind, and I just remember going to her house so many times where I didn't feel like I had anywhere else to go. I lost my grandmother. I was 15, and my papa at that time went into a nursing home. I didn't have a roadmap, just grit and a whole lot of stubbornness, and I'm still stubborn as a mule today. I know you've probably heard the old folks say that, but stubborn as a mule. Looking back, I think God built that strength in me early on. I just didn't realize it yet. We can dive deeper into my childhood later and different things that went on. I'm just giving you a review, but I started working when I was 17, and I met my kid's dad. He and I both worked at Wendy's together, and by the time I was 19, I was married with a kid on the way. Honestly, he and I, we were kids raising kids, but we loved each other in our own ways. Connor came first. Mason came 4 years later. And 5 years after that, my daughter, Lydia, was born. Everyone always asks me about Lid's name. I call her Lid. That is her nickname. Her name is Lydia. My plans were to name her Lydia because that's a name that my grandmother and me would talk about all the time. And she was like, if I ever had a daughter, I was going to name her Lydia. And I told my mama, I said, well, if I ever have a daughter, Mama, we're going to name her Lydia. And unfortunately, my grandmother passed before any of my children were born. But I kept my word and I named my daughter Lydia. But Mason, the middle child, if you have a middle child, you already know how the middle children are. They are in their own world. They have a mind of their own. And, he was like, I'm not calling her Lydia and you're not naming her Lydia. It's going to be Lydia. Well, at that time, I was like, Lydia, I'll have to add an A to her name. And I was like, well, their dad's name's Adam, so that fits well. So I named her Lydia. All 3 of my kids have the same dad. I get that question so many times. I don't know why. And they've been my why ever since. My kids have been my why ever since. The hardest part of those years wasn't money or exhaustion. It was fear. Although money and exhaustion was a real thing, it was fear. It was fear of becoming what I came from. I didn't want my kids to feel the same emptiness I felt growing up. I wanted to be more to them than what I had. I've always been creative, and so was their dad. Adam was a real, he was an artist, and we were a little weird pair. I remember he and I were both very creative to the core. I remember we first moved into our apartment. We had velvet couches and lava lamps. We thought we were trendsetters. We thought we were living on top of the world. But even then, life was messy, I look back on being married to him and having my kids to him, and the one thing that stands out was his parents. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, with my mama and papa, and I just feared God so much. I remember being a child, and I remember going to services and being like, everything we did, I felt like, oh my gosh, you can't do anything because anything you do, you're going to go to hell for it. And I feared God for a long time. And I remember just feeling at a young age like I was running from God. And I don't know if I can really explain it. I remember in 6th grade, Miss Jonesburg, it was 9th grade. Miss Jonesburg at Carrollton High School told me, she was like, you are one of the most intuitive people that I've met. And I was like, oh, wow. I don't know, my intuition has always been so strong of things. And I think that's one thing that's led me to be such an empathetic person. And I also think that level of discernment has kept me out of so many things that really could have got me in trouble or hurt worse than what I've already been hurt, if that even makes sense, So I'm so thankful for his parents because I got baptized October 4th, 2005 in a little church with his parents there. They dunked me under the water. And I think that was a turning point in my life. Although I've had so many trials since then. But I'm so thankful for that moment. And I don't even know if I even told his parents that I was thankful for that moment. But I was living in a haunted apartment at that time. Yes, a haunted apartment. If you live in my town, those apartments that are down from Central High School, it was haunted. It scared me so much. And we could talk about that later on if you want to drop it in the comments and say, oh, I need the details on that apartment, girl. I will give them to you. But somehow that chaos is where I really started to feel God's presence. I always felt God tugging at me. But he started tugging me in the middle of all that turmoil. Adam and I ended up divorcing while I was pregnant with Lyd, and that broke me a little bit. I always feared I'd leave my kids or I'd feel like I abandoned them. And that fear kept me fighting through everything, but healing after that was messy, really messy. And I didn't realize until recently that I don't think I ever really healed from it. And so now we're about to go into the next section. We're going to call it survival mode. So I do have a cold today. So if my voice cracks or I get a little scratchy or I have to take a break, just know I'm trying to thug it out up here for y'all today, okay? So this part I told you a while ago, I call it survival mode. And I've mentioned I was a child of divorce and I never felt loved in a way that stayed, and I carried that into adulthood, looking for love in all the wrong places, trying to feel a hole only God could fill. If you name it, I've probably been through it. I've feared homelessness. I've been around addiction. I've survived domestic violence. I've survived SA. Most of y'all know what SA is. I don't even know if I can say that word on the podcast. Maybe I can. Sexual assault. I've survived all of that. I was even locked in a closet for 2 days once. Locked in a closet for 2 days. I think I still have PTSD from that. Yeah. Those are the kind of things that shape you in ways that you cannot explain, But here's the thing. Even then, I didn't stop. At 25, I went back to school. I worked full time. I raised my kids. I took classes. It took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology. But I graduated from the local university. I wanted to help people from the kind of pain that I've been through, and just, I remember graduating and seeing the smile on all my kids' faces, and it just made my heart feel so warm inside. I remember Mason and Lyd being toddlers and me taking them to college with me. And I would have to email my instructors and I would have to say, I don't have anywhere to take my kids. Can they please come to class with me? Of course, my kids are spaced out so far. It was never 2 kids at once. There was 1 year I was bringing Mason and a couple years after that bringing Lyd, but I couldn't afford daycare. I worked at nighttime in a factory full time. So therefore my mother helped me at night with my kids, and Lyd and Mason sat into a lot of college classes. That's probably why Mason hates school now and was like, I ain't going to college, mama. I went to college enough with you. But I'm so thankful that my kids were able to see me work through that. And I feel like I was able to show them that if you work hard enough, you can achieve your goals. And if you go after something and you chase something and you don't give up, you can do it, Here's the thing. Even though I didn't stop at 25, it was so hard. And there is no way that I can sit here and tell you I did this, I did this, I did this. I did not do any of that alone. And I can look back now and say I only did some of that because of the grace of God. Because there's no way all of that strength inside of me was just me. It had to be him leading the way, guiding the way, saying, girl, I got you. I just didn't know it yet. After that, after I graduated, I went into counseling, and for a while it felt right. I feel like I was doing what I was made to do. I was counseling people, worked at a college for a while, counseling young adults. Then I was a CASA, working as a child advocate, and I really felt like I am walking in my purpose. I am doing what I'm supposed to do, And then life, as usual, had other plans. So years later, I got remarried the second time. If you recently just started following me, you know that I just went through a divorce. This is the divorce. This is the marriage I'm talking about from that divorce. Years later, I got married again, and I had just gotten out of a bad relationship. You heard me correctly. When I started this new relationship, I had recently just ended another relationship. And that is something I'm going to tell you from the bottom of my heart. And I mean it. Please do not jump relationship to relationship. It's not healthy. And you're going to drag all of that past mess from your previous relationship into another one. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship. And that bad relationship was one that left me broken. Physically and emotionally. And when I say physically broken, I'm talking broken tailbone. I'm talking fractured ribs. And, you know, when he and I, the husband I just divorced, when we got together, I think he and I were both broken. I remember scraping up change just to buy noodles for us to eat. You know, I thought he could heal me. And I look back now, you know, and I realize no one can heal you. That's the truth. No one can heal you. The only one that can heal you is God and you. You know, we struggled through those first years. You know, I went back to school. I got my master's. He started working his job. I eventually left counseling to work in corporate America. And for a minute, I thought, this is it. I've made it. But, you know, looking back, I never put God first. And I feel like in order to be successful in any relationship, friendship, whatever you're doing, you have to put God first or it's going to crumble. I feel like if you don't put God first, then other things of the world is going to come in. They're going to influence you. They're going to pull you away. They're going to intimidate you. They're going to scare you. They're going to bully you. They're going to harass you. They're going to do all those things if God is not your number one foundation. But then the world shook again. In 2020, my kids lost their dad, and I don't think I've ever been the same since. You know, that's the kind of loss that changes you. I never knew pain. I never knew pain until I was able to sit there and watch my kids grieve something I could not fix. That is a pain I don't wish on anyone. I don't even think I grieved the loss until years later. And still now, sometimes I wonder if I've ever even grieved the loss, because my number one priority in that moment was to make sure my kids were okay. You know, it is a pain that is, I can't describe it. You know, it made me get closer to God, but it also exposed every crack in me that I've been trying to hide for years. I'm sorry, I had to take me a little break. So we're going to name this next part, Creating from the Pain. One night the kids, we couldn't sleep. I remember me and the kids, we used to camp out in the living room after their daddy died because it was hard on all of us. I kept having dreams of their daddy. He kept coming to me in his dreams talking. And he would also come to Mason, talking to Mason in his dreams. And Mason and I would talk. You know, and Mason would be like, Mom, I had that same dream you had. And I was like, oh, wow. And they came to me one night and they was like, can we make some t-shirts with our daddy's face on them? They were wanting to put them on pillows so they could help sleep at night. And that's how my t-shirt business started. You know, it was something to do with them, you know, something to create through the grief. All my kids are so artistic. Every one of them are artistic, but they're different in their artistic abilities. And that was one way of us bringing all of their art and their skills. It was a way for us to collab, you know, to heal and to grow from the pain. And from that, God started building something that I never ever planned. You know, I made more shirts. You know, I started sharing stories online, funny ones, raw ones, grief ones, healing, motherhood, all of it. You know, I never set out to be a content creator. I was just trying to breathe. You know, and in that time, I never thought that people were watching my videos. Honestly, to be honest with you, I am so extremely shy and introverted. And if you meet me in person, there are a lot of times where I tell people, look, I am socially awkward. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm just weird in person a little bit. I am super shy in person. And a lot of that comes from that same kid feeling like I was never loved or never worthy. And sometimes in my head, I'm like, why would these people want to be talking to me in person? And so I get into my head. I overthink. Just last night, I was on stage at church. I'm singing at church Sunday. My mic was not working right. I could not hear myself sing. I was in my head the entire time. You're not good enough. You sound terrible. You sound horrible. They're all going to laugh at you. And it's just, I'm so introverted and shy. And it's different for me when I'm making a video or I'm being a content creator because it's just me talking. I don't feel like I'm talking to millions of people. It's so surreal to me sometimes because I literally have videos that have millions and millions of views. But it's easier for me to talk through the phone because I feel like I can just be more vulnerable and open up. I don't know if that even makes sense, but it does to me. Along with more videos came more followers. Then came the boutique. I had a full boutique, clothing, jewelry, hair bows, hats, all of those things, Collab deals came. I had a clothing rental business. I was still working a full-time job in corporate America. I swear, working over 100 hours a week. There were nights I'd DoorDash until 2 a.m. Not because I needed to DoorDash, because I had so much grief and so much pain. I remember crying while I was driving. I remember pulling up to my house, just sitting in the driveway crying, feeling like I was grieving 2 marriages. Yeah, 2. I was grieving my past marriage, one that ended years ago, and I was grieving the one I was still in. I honestly never felt seen or good enough, and I think that goes back to, I don't think God was put first on either part, and other things got in the way and other things came before, and I just never felt seen or good enough. And for years, I didn't realize now until I look back of how broken I felt for years. I remember crying myself to sleep for years. And it makes me so sad now that I put myself through that, knowing that I had been through so much at a young age of stuff that wasn't my fault, But I also told you that I never felt loved. I also think that I never really learned how to love myself enough to demand, what? I deserve the best. I deserve this, I should never feel second to anything. And that's eye-opening. And I know so many other people out there feel that. And I never want to feel that way again, ever. And I never want my kids to ever feel that way either. So the next chapter of my life is where I learned to surrender. This is the moment of my life where I learned, what? I got to give it all to God because I can't fix it. I can't control it. And I have been a fixer my entire life. My entire life, I've been a fixer. I've wanted to fix things for people because I know how it feels to be hurt and broken. And I never want some people to feel the way I felt, And I've always wanted to control, not necessarily control people. I've always wanted to feel like I was in control of my life because there have been so many times I have felt like I did not have control of my life and I got hurt. I remember being 16 years old, pulling a dresser in front of my door at night so no one could come in and bother me. I still wake up in the middle of the night screaming because I have to remind myself I'm not that 16-year-old anymore that has to worry about someone coming in their room. I never felt like I could control certain things and I got hurt. And so the things that I felt like I could control, I wanted to control it at all cost to keep me from having more pain. And this chapter is when I really learned I don't have to control everything. I have a God that I can trust in. He's going to take care of me and he's going to work things out. I just have to lay it all at his feet and I have to trust him. My husband at the time, he got really sick, and it was the first time in my life I had to let go of control. There was nothing I could do. There was no fixing. There was no managing. There was no saving. All I could do was lay it at God's feet. And that's when I learned real surrender. I couldn't make him wake up. I couldn't make his vitals change. I couldn't heal him. And after that, I thought life would get easier. He made a full recovery. He beat all the odds. I never thought life could get worse after that. I finally felt like, oh my gosh, this is a powerful testimony. The doctor said this would happen and all odds were beat, but I thought life would finally get easier. It did not. It did not. I had more loss, more trials, more deaths in the family. Our house flooded, insurance battles. My son was in an accident. The dogs got parvo. It was one storm after another for 2 whole years. 2 whole years. And through all that, I grew, I prayed, and I learned that peace doesn't always mean calm. Sometimes peace is just knowing God's still in control, even when everything's falling apart. So the next part, I was like, Lord, there has to be a breaking point. There has to be a birth of purpose, because I feel like I am sowing all the good seeds that I can sow. I'm out here in the community every week. I'm doing things. I'm giving my all. I'm doing my tithes. I'm doing my offering. I'm driving truckloads of supplies to hurricane victims. I'm cleaning up after hurricane victims. I'm having nightmares every night because of the things I seen from the Helene hurricane. It was like an actual movie up there. I'm doing everything I feel like I need to do to be the best human possible. Why do I keep going through all these trials? Why do I keep going through all this hurt? Why do I keep going through all this pain? Why do I keep losing friends and loved ones from addiction? Why am I living and dealing with people that are in full-blown addiction? Why is my house flooding? Why are the animals that I love so much, that bring me so much joy, why am I having to fight for them to live every day? Why am I worried about one of my own children just deciding they don't want to be here anymore? Why am I dealing with all of this? And I really feel like I ask myself every day, was I involved with someone that was sowing bad seeds behind my back and I didn't know it, and all of their dirt was coming to light, and I was just there getting the bad end of the deal because they were doing it and I was just living in it? I don't even know if that makes sense, but I asked myself that. Career-wise, things looked amazing. Award shows, newspaper features, collaborations. But on the inside, I was crumbling. And that's one thing about me. When I feel like my world is falling apart, my initiative, my go-to is work harder. Work. Then you won't notice it. Then you won't feel the pain. Work through it. Some people turn to the bottle. Some people go in the streets. Like some people, they handle their pain. They handle their grief. They handle things in different ways. Mine is work, to turn into a workaholic. And to the outside, it was like, oh, wow, this is another award Crystal's getting. This is another newspaper article about her. This is a collab. But on the inside, I was crumbling. I was like, Lord, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And one night I prayed. I said, Lord, I went to school to help people. But right now, I feel like I can't help anyone. I need help. I feel like my whole world is crawling apart. I hate going home every day. I sit in my driveway and I cry every single day. It's not good where I'm living. It's not good. And it's clear as day. He said, start the podcast. He said, start a podcast. And that's how this podcast was born. And although it took me 2 years to get it together, but that's how Unpolished was born. I never even planned on naming it Unpolished. The real name was Confidence and Chaos. The Unpolished name didn't come along until all this hell came about in my life this year. Unpolished was not born. It wasn't born out of success. It was born out of surrender. I really believe every bit of social media, every business, every word I've written, it's all been God's plan to glorify Him, not me. I've always been introverted. I like my quiet time. I like my porch. I like my animals. But when God calls you to do something, you don't argue. You just obey. This year, it's the year that changed everything. And that's what I'll call this part of my life. It's the year that changed everything. Because this year, whew, I feel like this year was the year that all those loose strings were tied together. You know, I feel like I had so many loose strings in my life. If you followed me, you know it's been one of the hardest years of my life, but it's also been one of the best years of my life because I feel like I've been able to heal from things that happened 20 years ago. I feel like I was able to heal from the first broken marriage. I feel like I've been able to heal from going to a second terrible relationship with a man that locked me in the closet for 2 days and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. I feel like I've been able to heal from being in that broken home. I feel like I've been able to heal from, being that teenager that was afraid to go to sleep at night. I feel like I've been able to heal from seeing my friends around me pass away from addiction. It has been so hard, but it has been so rewarding. And I just can't even describe the way that God has worked in my life. He's always been in my life. He's always had my hand. He's always led me and guided me along the way. But I think this is where I finally surrendered and said, you know what? Do what you want to do. I'm a vessel. I'm a vessel. You do what you want to do. And I really feel like He is just using His glory for everything. Divorce, loss, rebuilding again. Losing 12 years of my life. I lost 12 years of my life after my divorce. I don't regret it. I don't regret my divorce at all. And sometimes that makes me feel guilty. It makes me feel bad. Sometimes I feel like it was needed. Divorce, loss, rebuilding again. Losing 12 years of my life. It hurt. It hurt real bad. I don't regret it. If I could go back over and do it all again, would I still sign those papers and move forward? Absolutely. Because I know it's what I was supposed to do. If you followed me on social media, I had no idea this storm was coming at all. I had no idea the storm that was brewing in January 2025. No idea at all. But I do remember at the end of 2024, after my house had flooded, after I had poured blood, sweat, tears into my house to remodel it because the insurance denied part of the claim, after I poured thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into my house, I told everyone, I was like, I don't know what the Lord has planned for me, but it's something big. I've rebuilt this house with my bare hands and I know something big is coming, but I don't know what it is. And I said, Lord, whatever is not of you, I want you to remove it from my life so I can walk closer with you. Whatever isn't on the path you've called me to do, remove it. Remove it. Because these past 2 years, I've learned to surrender. I've learned that when there is no way, you're going to make a way. I have learned that when the doctors say this person is not going to heal, you have shown me that you can heal them. You have shown me that when man closes a door, that you can open another door that's better. And I fully trust in you that you're going to take care of me and I'm going to be where you want me to be. And I'm going to be where it is going to glorify you. And everyone is going to be able to see you shine in me. So do what you need to do. Whatever isn't on the path, whatever you've called me to do, I trust you. And He did. He did. And He worked fast. He worked fast. It didn't feel like it was fast in that moment. But when I look back at it now, I was like, well, dang, that was fast. You answered that prayer very fast, Lord. What about all those years I was praying for 2 years in a row and I was waiting and waiting. And I said, Lord, what time zone are you on? Because I don't think we're on the same time zone. We're not in the same time area. I didn't realize at that time that what He removed was going to be everything I worked hard for the past 12 years. I had no idea that I was going to feel like Job. And there have been many times in my life where I've been like, Lord, am I Job? Am I Job? Little did I know then that this part was going to be the big part where I was like, man, maybe I am like Job. You know, it's hard sometimes. But I finally feel like where I'm supposed to be. You know, I lost a 12-year relationship. I lost an entire family, friends. You know, when that era of my life ended, I ended all contact with anyone associated with me because I knew it's what I needed to do. My family is not close. We've not gotten together for the holidays, and I can't tell you when. My dad and me are close now since his wife passed. All of my holidays were spent with his family, and now I sit here now and I'm like, what am I going to do Thanksgiving and Christmas? I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Family, friends, relationship, the house that we built, that I spent 12 years that I spent 12 years working for, that I fixed with my bare hands when it flooded. Lost part of my animals. And the only thing I kept was my kids and my vehicles. Everything else, I said, you know what, you can have it all. Even these 3 tubs of shoes, take them all. I don't need any of this anymore. And I completely started over. But before all that, it took a lot for me to realize that even if I lose everything, God is still in the middle. He is still in the mix, and He still has a plan. Because I'm telling you, everything fell apart. That January of this year, things got bad. You know, my website was taken down. My business accounts were taken down. My social media pages that I'd spent 4 and 5 years working for, they were shut down. You know, I was like, I'm being blackmailed for actions I didn't even do. You know what I'm saying? You're coming after me for something I didn't even know. You're trying to attack me. And I was blindsided by all of this, you know? I ended up having to get a cease and desist on one of those women. And I had some social media friends that helped me restore all of my pages and get all of my stuff back. I never got my old website back, but with everything that fell apart, it was like God hit pause. And in that quiet, I wrote my books. I self-published. I started taking pictures again, making art, creating. And for the first time, I wasn't building anything for someone else. I was building for me. And I was building for Him. You know? I remember feeling like, do you mean to tell me this one individual can go after and can attack everything I've worked hard for years? I've been harassed. My kids have been harassed. I'm embarrassed. I'm hurt. My daughter's getting pictures of screenshots of text messages sent to the school. Kids are laughing at her. I was so angry. I was angry. And then God said, you know what? I'm going to put it all back together for you. And I just took some quiet time, you know, and just started rebuilding and getting closer to Him. And He started putting the pieces back of everything that I felt like I lost. And the pieces are so much brighter and so much warmer and vivid than anything I left behind. Because I know He built it. And I know I've put Him first. And I know it's right. I know this era of my life is right. And I know I'm on the path of where He wants me to be every single day when I wake up. I'm like, well, what you want me to do today? What are we going to do today? For the first time in my life, I'm alone. But I'm not alone. Because I'm leaning on Him instead of leaning on another individual. After my first marriage, I immediately went into another relationship, and that relationship was hell. Hell. And right after that relationship, I was so scared to be by myself because, number one, I was afraid he was going to come after me and do something to me. I immediately jumped to my next relationship, which turned to my second marriage, and I've never spent time by myself. I've never spent time to learn of who I really am, and not just who I really am, but who God called me to be and who He wants me to be. Because until I'm right with Him, I'm not going to be with who He pairs me with. And here's the part I love the most. After all that, I'm back in school again. 42 years old, back in school. I already have a master's degree, and I said, I ain't never going to school again. I believe the education system is one of the biggest cons there are in the world, besides insurance. That's another topic for a podcast we can talk about, the outstanding prices of education and insurance. I could go on for days for that, but I'm back and I'm studying for my career and life coaching certification. I used to think my education was about degrees or careers, but now I know it's about a calling. God brought me full circle, right back to helping people heal. Only now I'm doing it from a place of wholeness, not survival. I feel like before, when I would talk to people and I would meet people and I would speak to people, I was speaking to them out of survival. And now I'm speaking to them out of wholeness. And it's so different. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still unpolished. Like I told you before, honey, this podcast was never supposed to be called Unpolished. When that lady that was communicating with him, the ex, when she started attacking my pages and everything on the internet, my old podcast page got taken down. And I had to rename it to Unpolished. And now I'm like, well, Unpolished is so fitting. Why didn't I think of that the first time? Before the old podcast got taken down and dismantled and, all of those things. But God brought me full circle. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. But I'm walking in peace. I'm finally living for what God called me to do. Not for what the world expected me to do. And honestly, it feels kind of good, Right now, it feels kind of good. I have to go to Walmart in just a minute to pick up some things. I don't really want to go in there. But other than that, I feel pretty good. And this next part, it's what people don't see. It's the garden. I'm going to call it the garden. That sounds good to me, the garden. I think sometimes people look at someone's life and they only see where that person is now. And they don't see everything it took to get there. I get so many mean and hateful comments on my social media. It blows my mind sometimes because I'm like, I'm not mean to anyone. I'm not a mean girl. I can be. And there's many times when I tell someone, if you're going to be funny, you need to be funnier than me. Because, baby, my sense of humor was built out of trauma. Okay, I honestly think I could have a comedy show on the road, making people laugh. I think I could. Maybe if the Lord puts that in His plans, I will. I have to make sure it's a comedy show that glorifies Him. But people don't see everything it took to get here. And they immediately criticize me, or they immediately think I had a silver spoon in my mouth, or I've had everything given to me. It's like walking up to a beautiful garden. All the flowers are blooming. The fruit is bright and ripe. Everything is picture perfect, And people say, wow, she's really got a green thumb. But they don't see what happened before that. They didn't see the seed that had to go in the ground. They didn't see the roots stretching in the dark. They didn't see the days when the flower was wilted, when there wasn't enough rain, when the lawnmower accidentally cut it down, when it had to start all over again, They didn't see the fertilizer. They didn't see the plant food. They didn't see when the days someone stepped on it, when it bent, when it broke, when it had to fight its way toward the sunlight. All they see now are the ripe tomatoes and think, man, that looks easy. But the truth is, that plant went through hell just to get to where it is now. And that's how I feel about me. People may see what I'm doing now, the podcast, the books, the photos, the peace, but they don't see the fight it took to get here. They don't see the tears. They don't see the nights I didn't sleep, or the prayers I prayed when I was too weak to even speak. I've fought my whole life. I've been a fighter since I was little. And now I'm finally in a season where I don't have to fight anymore. And honestly, sometimes that's hard to believe. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, thinking, this is too good. This is too peaceful. But God's been showing me peace isn't something to be suspicious of. You hear me? Peace is not something to be suspicious of. Peace is what He's been trying to give me all along. I've just been running. I've been running my entire life thinking I wasn't good enough to do what He called me to do. And that's the fact of the matter. I've been running my whole life because I never felt like I was good enough to do what He called me to do. It caused me to get into poor relationships. It caused me to get into relationships with addicts. It caused me to get locked in closets. It caused me to fear almost homelessness. It caused me so much time and so much pain. But He never left me. And He says He'll never leave you. He says He'll never forsake you. But He really showed me that. Matter of fact, now that I think of it, when all this started in January, when I got those screenshots that said, I'm going to release this information to the public between me and your husband unless you pay me this amount of money. 2 months prior to that, I had a dream and I came to social media and I said, hey, best friends, I had a dream this morning. And the Lord told me, I never told you it'd be easy. I told you I wouldn't leave you. And I came to social media and I made a video that morning while I was outside feeding Johnny and the goats and all the chickens. And I said, I don't know who this message is for. It's got to be for one of y'all best friends. But the Lord said that He'd never leave you. He never promised you it wouldn't be easy. I didn't know that whole time that message was for me. But like I said again, God's been showing me peace isn't something to be suspicious of. Peace is what He's been trying to give me all along. For so long, I thought fighting made me strong, but really surrender did. I spent years running from God, trying to fix things my way, wondering why it fell apart. Now I can see I was fighting battles He never asked me to fight. I mean, He clearly says the battle was not mine. He clearly wrote the battle is not. I was still fighting battles He never asked me to fight. I've lost so many people to addiction. People I love deeply. And sometimes that guilt still hits me. Like, why couldn't I save them? Why did I survive when they didn't? But I know now that's not my job. That's not my job to live and to keep using my story. My job is to keep using my story for His glory. My job is to live. I've lost so many people to addiction. People I love deeply. And sometimes that guilt still hits me. Like, why couldn't I save them? Why did I survive when they didn't? But I know now that's not my job. My job is to live and to keep using my story for His glory. I've multitasked my entire life. People always say, how do you do so much? Why do you do that? I have multitasked my entire life. I've worked 2 jobs, raised kids, chased goals, survived chaos. Even now, sitting still is hard for me. Leah had me watch a Netflix series last week, and I swear I was twitching the entire time. I told my friend Jennifer, I was like, what do I even do with my hands when I'm sitting here? I wrote a whole book, a whole novel while I was watching that Netflix series. Well, let me tell you something. Stillness feels foreign when your whole life has been survival. Stillness feels foreign when your whole life has been survival. But God's teaching me now how to rest, how to stop performing and just be. I've never really been alone. Not till now. I told you that a while ago. I've always gone from one relationship to the next, never given myself time to heal, always trying to find wholeness in someone else. And now I see that that was never fair to me or them. You can't heal in chaos. You can't heal while you're running. You can't heal through somebody else. These days, I picture myself dragging this old trash bag behind me. full of guilt, full of resentment, anger, sadness, anxiety, all of it. All of it. Just leaking into every new season I step into. Leaking. That trash bag leaking. That trash bag leaking into my last marriage. That trash bag leaking into every career step going forward. These days, I understand now. I was broken. I'm finally setting that bag down, unpacking it, cleaning it out. I was broken. And I kept choosing broken people. Two people don't heal each other. They bleed together. They don't heal together. They bleed together. Now I'm learning how to heal alone. To sit in the quiet and to let God rebuild me. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. But it's real. And maybe that's what Unpolished is really about. The beauty that comes from the breaking. The garden that grows in the dirt. And the peace that comes after the storm. That's a little bit about me. We can dive deeper on those topics if you want to. We can talk about it deeper, and we can talk about your issues too if you want to. We can hash it out together, you know. But this next part is going to be a little lighter, okay? It's going to be a little learning experience for you. Just call it a little educational tool if you want to. All right, this is Crystal's Real Talk on building a brand that lasts. I always get asked, you know, what tips do you have for a content creator or anyone starting out? What do you, and I made a list. I made a list just for you because I don't want to forget anything because it's so important. Number 1, get your pen, paper, write it down, whatever you want to do. Okay. Number 1, never link all your social media accounts. Okay. Do not link them. I know it seems convenient. I know when you log into the Instagram's like link your Facebook, link your Threads account, link. And you're like, well, I could post one time and it'll go to 3 platforms. There you go. Don't do it, honey. Please don't do it. When that girl tried to blackmail me with his and her text messages, one reason it was so successful in taking down all my social media sites was because it was linked. My Instagram was linked to my Facebook. My Facebook was linked to my podcast. My podcast was linked to my photography page. My photography page was linked to Lid's Shirt Shop. My Instagram was linked to Threads. When one got taken down and banned, it took all of them. Don't do it. I know it's so much more convenient to have them linked. Take a little bit out of your time each day if you need to post on all of them and post separately. Because if anything ever happens and one goes down, they all going to go with it. Cross-advertise. Use your platform on Facebook and say, hey, go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I posted that link today on Instagram. Hey guys, I'm about to go live on TikTok in an hour. Here's my TikTok. Cross-advertise them, okay? You want to build a brand, not just a social media page. I mean, you may just want to build a social media page, but my advice to you is to build a brand, okay? You want a brand. You don't want to be living off of views, okay? You don't want to be living off of how many people watch it and you're going to get paid on how many people watch it. I mean, that sounds good. It can be good, but it could go horribly wrong. Okay? If social media went away tomorrow, what you going to do? All right? How you going to live? And you ain't going to have nothing for nobody to view. All right? If your husband starts talking to another woman on the internet and she wants to blackmail you and she takes down all your pages, if you're just living off views and she takes all your income, what you going to do? You know? If social media disappeared tomorrow, how would people still know your name? That's what you need to ask yourself. How would people still know your name? You know, write a book, sell your art, offer coaching, build a website, do something that lives beyond the algorithm. Think outside the box. If it all went away today, how would people still find me? I have so many people in my circle that are doing it right. So many people that I see that are building a brand, and they are friends and I love them deeply. Christine, Mama Cookie, love her to death. She has built an entire brand. her food truck, her cooking, her nails, all of those things. You know? My friend Will and Will's husband, they have their own business and their website and they ship products every day. They have built a brand. You know? Mrs. Caroline, Mississippi Queen, her recipes and her brand. They didn't just build a following. They built something sustainable. That's what lasting influence looks like. Don't chase the trends. Create your moments. You don't want to be a trend chaser. You might. But in the long run, if you're chasing trends and you're chasing things that aren't you, you're not going to be authentic. And then you're going to be asking yourself 6 months from now, who the hell am I? Because I'm doing what everybody else is doing on the internet. Be yourself. That's why they connect with you. People can feel when you're being genuine. If something's trending and it fits your heart, go for it. But don't force yourself into a box. Okay? Don't chase the algorithm. Chase authenticity. All right? Talk to your followers like they're your friends. Because they are your friends. They are showing up every day to support you. Look in that camera and speak from your heart, even if your voice shakes. The most viral moments come from the most vulnerable truths. Okay? And I guarantee you, if you're going through something right now, there's another person out there that's going through it too. You are not alone. Don't compare yourself to other ones. Okay? You might look at someone with 500,000 followers and think, I'll never get there. But remember, they once started with 0 too. Okay? God will grow your platform at the pace your character can sustain. You hear me? God will grow your platform at the pace your character can sustain. You know, batch your content, but don't batch your heart. It's smart to plan ahead, but leave space for real life. If something moves you, share it. That's what people connect with. And don't get caught up in the numbers. I know it's hard not to get caught up in the numbers because you get on these websites or these social media pages and they're like, well, you need 5 more people to do this. You need 2 more people to do this. You need 3 more people to do this. If 200 people listen and 5 feel less alone, then that's ministry. That's your purpose. That should be your purpose. A lot of brands will reach out to you, want you to collab. Work with brands that align with your message and your morals. You hear me? If you come over here every day talking about Jesus, but then that, let's say an alcohol company wants you to advertise for them, and then you're like, oh, well, that's good money. I'm going to do it anyway. People are going to question your morals. Before saying yes to any collab with the company, ask yourself, would I use this if no one's watching? If the answer is no, then pass on it. I know the money may sound good. The product may look good. You may think you need it. But if it was something you were supposed to be advertising, it was something you were supposed to be doing, the Lord's going to send it there. And I firmly believe in that. Okay? You don't need a perfect setup. You don't need a script. You're okay with messy hair. You're okay with unfiltered moments. Those are the moments that's like, God, I'm tired, but I'm trusting you. That's the content that builds loyalty. Stay consistent. I know you want to give up. I know you want to give up. Stay consistent. Even the videos with 300 views are the ones that change lives. Keep showing up. God sees the seeds even when no one else does. All right? You can be transparent without being exposed. You hear me? You can be transparent without being exposed. And that's the thing about social media. People will think they know everything. Oh my God, I know everything. You pick and choose what you want to share. There are so many parts of this last marriage I have not revealed, and I have not told y'all things that were dirty, horrible. It was terrible. I've not even revealed it. And that's okay. You can let people know your healing journey, and you can let people know things that you've went through and it was bad without airing out all your dirty laundry, you know? Share lessons after you've healed. Not while you're still bleeding. I know we want to get on there and my baby daddy just picked up my son and we want to air it all out then. You're still bleeding then. You're still bleeding then. Talk about it after you healed. Boundaries are holy. Okay? I want you to think about digital products. I want you to think about Patreon. I want you to think about merch, photography, your own site. Diversify your income. Don't ever depend on those views or brand deals for your income. It could go away in an instant. Build yourself and who you are. You know, at the end of the day, this whole social media thing, it's not about the likes, the shares, or the numbers. It's about showing up as who God created you to be. Because if you show up as what God creates you to be, He's going to do anything bigger than man could ever do with those likes, shares, or numbers. Okay? Show up as who God wants you to be. Messy, real, unpolished. Because that's where He does His best work. Not in perfection, but in honesty. Honey, if we were all perfect, there would be no need for Him to show up anywhere because we would already be perfect. You know? I've shared a lot of my story with y'all. The hard parts, the healing, the hope. This podcast isn't about pretending to have it all together. It's about being willing to show you who I really am and trusting that somewhere in my story, you'll find a piece of your own. You know? You'll find a piece of your own story somewhere in mine. And I'm here to talk about it with you, you know, because that's what Unpolished is. It's my journey shared with you in real time. So if you're out there trying to grow your platform, remember this. Don't build it for validation. Build it for purpose. Let people see the real you, the one who laughs, cries, messes up, and gets back up again. That's what changes lives. That's what connects hearts. And as always, thank you for being here. You know? Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for supporting, and for just being part of this journey with me. Some of y'all have been here 5 and 6 years. Some of y'all have been here so long, and I'm so thankful and grateful, and I hope that in some way I have made a positive impact on your life. And I know that you've made a positive impact on mine. Keep showing up. Keep shining in your own lane. And remember, you don't have to be polished to have a purpose. Until next time, I'm Crystal, and this is Unpolished.